of you to this webinar series. This happens to be the first NSN webinar we are having for the year 2023. And this webinar in this webinar, we'll be having a presentation by Professor Bamidele Victor Owoyele, and he'll be presenting on responsible conduct of research. So the presentation will last for 40 minutes, then we'll use the remaining minutes for, we'll use the remaining 20 minutes for questions, answers, and discussions. The entire webinar will be will last for just 1 hour. So I'll go ahead to citation of Professor Bamidele Owoyele. Professor Bamidele Victor Owoyele is a professor of physiology with a specialization in neuroscience. He obtained his BSc and PhD degree at the University of Ilorin, Nigeria. His master's degree was obtained from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. He rose through the ranks to become a professor in the University of Ilorin in 2017. His initial lines of research were in the field of pain and inflammation. He had worked extensively on natural herbs with anti-nociceptive and anti-inflammatory properties. Sometimes he combines this with gastric mucosa irritation and antipyretic studies in rodents. Recently, he has focused on chronic pain and neuroinflammatory diseases with models such as sciatic nerve ligation, Parkinson-like pathology, and Alzheimer's-like diseases. He was focused. He was 3 times the head of physiology department at the University of Ilorin. He was a visiting fellow at the Massachusetts Hospital and Harvard University, Boston, USA. He was a TED Fund NRF grant-winning principal investigator. He has also won many other grants. He is currently the president of the Neuroscience Society of Nigeria. He has been involved in the supervision of 16 PhDs, 25 MScs, and over 450 undergraduate students. He has over 130 scholarly publications in reputable national and international journals. That said, I would like to usher in the presenter of in this webinar series, Professor Victor Owoyele, to start his presentation. You have the floor now, Prof.
Thank you very much, Secretary, and the VP and other members of the executive of the Neuroscience Society of Nigeria and the audience this morning. It is a privilege to be here, and I'm speaking on responsible conduct of research. The question will be, how did I come about this topic? I want to first say that I have no disclosures other than the fact that I'm a leader, fortunate to be a leader in these societies that are shown on the screen. Then why this topic? It was when I went to attend this school, which is displayed on the screen, which held at Abuja in October last year. And the organizers asked me to speak on this topic. We had a nice time, and the student and the organizer felt that, and the vice president, who also happened to listen, felt that this topic should be given a wider publicity. I want to say that the school have given us 2 webinars. The previous webinar that we did in November was also a lecture that was given in that particular Hebrew school also. So for this lecture today, I will be looking at this outline and as I talk to us about responsible conduct of research. What is a research? As you can see, you use your magnifying lens to look at so many things, including examining looking at books, looking for knowledge, looking for practice, link up, and you search, you look for until you find. So everybody have one understanding of what research is and whatever it is. But again, research is delving into the future. And if you are curious at all, you want to know, there are things that you think, there are questions in your mind, and that's why you have research questions. So you try to actually find solution to things around you or things that are not clear to you, and you find a cause maybe of nature, or sometimes you just have a willful desire to investigate things, and that is the curiosity that drives research. So a research in a proper definition is the systematic study, investigation into and study of materials and resources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. So, and I believe that as many of us that are here have been involved in one research or the other. Research purpose. Purpose of research is to further understand the world and to learn how this knowledge can be applied, and especially to better our everyday life and to better the planet where we are, not just for human being alone. So it is it's a kind of a problem-solving agenda, live engagement for many people, especially those who are in the strict world of academia and research institutes. So, and what is responsible conduct of research? That is conducting scientific investigations in accordance with norms and utmost integrity. Why you can have your desire to investigate, to study, but there must be some rules that guide you on what you do, what not to do. So that is, and this rule is not just what you think, but it's what the society feel is the best. So, and that is why the goal of research, of responsible conduct of research education will be to develop, to nurture, and to maintain a culture of integrity in research. Even if it is the simplest of research, there should be integrity in it. And to discourage as well as prevent unethical conduct in carrying out our research. And also to empower researchers to hold themselves and others accountable to high ethical standard. That means even if you are doing your work very well and you have a neighbor that is not doing very well, you should be a whistleblower. You should, as much as possible, make sure that everybody do what is right. And that's why we have some of these committees that try to look at what we do. And it is also important for us to improve the ability to make responsible choices, especially when we are faced with ethical dilemma. Maybe you don't know what to do, or there are certain things that are happening. Maybe you have spent a lot of money and your research is going to get spoiled. What should you do in this instance? Or you suddenly find something going amiss. So there are guidelines that are able to help us to be able to do our research properly. And of course, to provide an appreciation for the range of accepted scientific practices. There are practices that are there for conducting research. And the issue is, okay, I want to do the research. I'm a moral man. I know what is right. But your morals, as I said, your principles regarding your right and wrong is your morals. So, but we need morality in research, but we also need more than good morals in research. And so that is why we have to balance between ethical consideration and moral consideration. For ethical considerations, you talk about research ethics. Here you have laid down set of rules regarding what is right and wrong. And this has been laid down not by one man, it has been laid down by a committee with proven integrity, and they have been scrutinized. And this, whatever they have said, is supposed to guide our research. And they may be professional ethics, like in law, in medicine. This is more important. And ethical consideration also takes into consideration morality, but it extends beyond just an individual morality, but extend to what is applicable, what is right for the society and for the profession. So research ethics, we said the specific principles, rules, and guidelines and norms that are related to research are called research ethics. And in this, you can see it requires the fact that you must be honest, there must be privacy, there must be value, there must be confidentiality, there must be dignity, there must be justice, you must follow regulation, rules, and you must have autonomy to declare what you found. And you must have autonomy to declare what you found. And also the origin of modern documented ethics. Now we are talking about carrying out our research according to ethics. Now there wasn't always ethics in the beginning, but it started from the stories of the Nazi medical war crimes, during the World War II. And you see people in concentration camps dissected people's life. They injected anything, including petrol, live viruses made to sit on ices for hours. And because of these atrocities, there was the Nuremberg Code, which was set up by at Nuremberg, and a group of people sat down to come up with a code to guide the medical research, especially. So these are the 10 Nuremberg Code, which are the first set of ethics that were created for conducting research, especially in medicine and social sciences. So one, that the researchers must voluntarily, that participants must voluntarily consent to research. You don't just grab anybody and use them for research. And research should aim to contribute to the good of society. And then it must be based on sound theory and prior animal testing. Don't just grab a human being when you have not even done anything on animals. Research must avoid unnecessary physical and mental suffering. And no research project should go forward where serious injury or death are potential outcome. Also, the degree of risk taken with research participants cannot exceed anticipated benefit of the results. And also, proper environment and protection for participants must be guaranteed. Then experiments can be conducted only by those who are scientifically qualified. So people must be licensed before they could enter into to use anybody, especially human being, to do their work. And human subjects must be allowed to discontinue their participation at any time. You don't have to constrain them. And scientists must be prepared to terminate the experiment if there is cause to believe that continuation will be harmful or result in injury or death. These are the 10 Nuremberg Code which guide research, and they are still applicable till today. There are other regulatory principles like the Helsinki Declaration and then the Belmont Report of 1979. Now, as researchers, there are some moral obligations that we have. One, some people don't love themselves. And so if they grab anybody because they don't love themselves, they can do anything to anybody. So, but first and foremost, you must love yourself. And then after loving yourself, there should be equal love for yourself and others, so that what you cannot do to yourself, you can't do to others. And you must have regard for the love of others. And so that means in addition to loving yourself, whatever another person loves, you must also have regard to that particular love. And you must have genuine concern for our society, our planet, the country, and generations to come. And of course, while we also do this as researchers, we must have truthfulness. And as I've said, it is required in research. We owe ourselves the truth at all times, irrespective of how your outcome is going. You just have to be truthful to that. We owe our funders, those who have funded research, the truth. We owe our employers the truth, because if we do anything contrary, we can tarnish the name of our funders, we can tarnish our name, we can tarnish the name of our employers, we can tarnish the name of our society, we can bring even more harm. We must make sure that we do not mislead people when we carry out our research. And I said there are some cases of bad misconduct, but I'm not going to go into that. One big example is the Tuskegee civil study in the US, where some people for nearly 40 years, some people who are having syphilis were untreated, even though penicillin was recently discovered and it was meant to treat them. But this group of people who are poor farmers were left untreated, and then because the research was to try to understand the cause of transmission of syphilis, and to try to see how many drugs that can be, the drugs can attack the different stages. So at what stage can any drug can attack? They were trying to look at the mechanism of action anyway, and the individual was suffering, and some of them died. About 400, there were 400 in number, about 30 died, and then some of their wives were infected, some of their children were infected. It took a whistleblower in 1972 to blow this out, to say that this research is ongoing, and it was a very bad case. So if you get to look at Wikipedia, there are a host of current misconduct that was that has been listed. So looking at institutional setup, usually in every institution you should have for animals, institutional animal care and use committee for every institution. And of course, these are some of the functions in yellow. They should keep record and make sure that they meet every month and review and approve protocols and authorize extension and attend researchers concern, advice to the head of housing facility, and have the power to suspend wrong protocols. So that is for animals. And for continuing with animals also, the ICOG also should be able to regulate and look at the 3R of animal research. That means replace, if it is not possible, if it is possible to replace animals, let's replace them. And if it is possible to reduce the number, let's reduce them. And we should try to make sure that injury to animals are minimal. So they help us to be able to follow the ethic that is required in research. And for human being, you have the institutional review board, which look at research that is on human subjects. So we should, in every institution where there's a tendency to do animal research and do human studies, we should have these two separate bodies looking at research across the institution. So usually, it is expected that anybody who wants to do a research should undergo training, and it's very important to have training in ethics. And a big one is the CT program, where you have a lot of lectures, a lot of things to learn about ethics and how to conduct research. And as I said, there should be institutional ethics to guide research. Also, we must try to avoid misconduct, and I said component of research integrity. That include avoiding misconduct, no falsification, no fabrication, and no plagiarism. I will still explain that later. You must have good collaboration with author and know who owns data and manage the data properly. And it's also important to do a proper peer review before you do your work and after you do your work, and to know that you're not just conducting a research just based on doing that, but you have a real need to be able to do that research. And that was why you actually started to conduct the research. You must resolve conflicts of interest or obligations with yourself and your employer and with people that are also working with you. You must resolve every complicity and funding sources. So when we do collaboration, it is expected to bring up authorship. And one area of misconduct is in authorship. So, and according to the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, these are the categories of people that are supposed to be authors. Those who have been involved in the conception and design of the study, or analysis and interpretation of data, those that are involved in drafting of the article, or critical revision of this content, and then those that are involved in final approval of the version to be published, or those that are responsible for all the aspects of the work that ensures that the question related to accuracy or integrity of the part can be investigated or analyzed. And as a matter of fact, all authors listed in the paper must meet the 4 criteria. Participants that do not meet them must be acknowledged. So that means you have a section for authorship and you have a section for acknowledgement. Everybody cannot be an author, and we must try to place everybody where they belong, because that's a kind of a misconduct. So for negotiation, it is said that you must ensure that whoever writes the first draft gets first authorship, and this is a big issue. Whoever brings up the first draft the order of authorship on the byline should be a joint decision of the co-authors. There should be an agreement on where you appear on that particular list of authors. And you should ensure that an agreement is negotiated very early when you start the work, and ensure that there is a shared understanding with the supervisor of the duties as defined by the job, and ensure that the annual appraisers should look at your work every time, and then make sure that there is opportunity for people, your co-authors, to appeal, to make an appeal and say, I don't like this, I don't like that. And there must be openness. So I brought this. I hope this is clear enough. This is one work in my laboratory, and this was an editorial that we published in Frontiers. And as you can see, there are 4 of us here: myself, my friend in Israel, my friend in Cameroon, and he's from Brazil. I think it's in Europe now. So we have to negotiate this authorship. And as you can see, the contribution here, we said, myself, I produced the first draft, and then Roy and Telesfor and Daniel did revise the draft. And of course, what we eventually published was a very good work. It was even far different from my initial draft, because every one of us had a look at that, and everybody appeared on the authorship. This is a collaborative work. We are in different countries, in different continents, or maybe in different continents, and we have been able to resolve our authorship lineup. And because I was the first that did the draft, and that was why my name is coming as the first author. Now, here is another publication from my laboratory. This was a work that was funded by TED Fund, and all the other authors, except the first author, wrote the grant and won the grant. But the first author, Dr. Olugbami, was the PhD student. She did the work in the Louisiana State University, under the close monitoring of Dr. Bamidele and Dr. Lee. So because we won the grant doesn't mean that my name, I am the principal investigator. But because she did the work, Lugami, and she produced the first draft, she is our first author. So, and in management of our data, in order to avoid misconduct, there should be proper notes that must be taken. This is an example of a note from a lab. And there should be things like data management using data storage devices. This is one computer for storage. Every of my PhD students have access to this computer, and it's partitioned for them. They store their data. In addition to this, we also have movable disks where you can store information. So there should be those hard copy data notes and the electronic one, and so that even if there are issues where somebody wants to say, oh, you didn't do this well, or something is wrong, or you want to reanalyze, you should be able to go back to wherever you store this information and try to reanalyze and come up with your defense. So a very big issue, and which is also part of misconduct, and which people need to look at so that their research must be responsibly conducted, is data reproducibility. The lack of reproducibility in scientific research has, these are the outcome, the impact, has negative impact on health, a lower scientific output efficiency, slower scientific progress, and like the person who have done a lot of the work and millions of dollars of naira have been wasted, and nothing is coming out of it because it cannot be reproduced and it cannot be used for the benefit of mankind. So according to a Nature study in 2016, 70%, greater than 70% of researchers were unable to reproduce the findings of other researchers, which is very terrible. And as a matter of fact, that 60% of researchers could not even reproduce their own findings, which is also terrible. The reproducibility issue is a big one. And even though people are looking at it, but our work should be reproducible. So factors affecting data reproducibility and not making our work maybe to be responsibly conducted is lack of access to methodological details. Sometimes we don't have access to raw data. and research material. That's why in recent times, when you publish, people ask where they can find your data set. And sometimes some journals request that you must upload your data set, or you make a statement that the data set can be easily be accessible upon request from the authors. These are just effort to make sure that our data are reproducible. And then sometimes the authors use misidentified and cross-contaminated or over passage set lines and microorganisms. So whatever they have used, the method is not properly disseminated, and so it becomes difficult, or they may disseminate everything and then maybe just like a 5% of the information that is required is not made known. So the other people that are trying to do the work cannot actually get that particular 5% that is required, and it becomes an issue. So sometimes the individual have data sets, but they are too complex and they are not very skillful in analysis. So they are not able to bring up very good outcome from the data that they have. So for data reproducibility and to be able to guide our activities, there must be robust sharing of data, material, software, and other tools among scientists. And there should be use of authenticated biomaterials and training on statistical method and study design. There should be pre-registration of scientific studies. And as a matter of fact, even if your data is negative, you should be able to publish it. Don't say because you seek out to see something is neuroprotective, and by the time your results are coming, you see that it's actually destroying the cells, the neurons, and you say, no, this is not what I'm looking for, or it's not even doing anything. We should be able to publish whatever is the outcome of our findings. So what constitutes misconduct and makes our work irresponsible? These are plagiarism, which I've mentioned, and falsification, fabrication. Now, plagiarism, we all know that when you use other people's work without attribution to them, without claiming, saying that they are the one that have done it, and you make it your own, that is plagiarism. So when we cite other people's work, when we use them, we should be able to cite that we have taken this material from this particular place or the other. And for falsification, these include manipulating research materials, equipment, or processes, or changing or omitting data. Sometimes you have like 10 values, and if you process that 10 value, it's going to change your outcome significantly. So you try to remove 3 or 2 or 1. That is a kind of misconduct or falsification, because that is not the utmost thing, the whole thing that you obtain. And also for fabrication, he said it is making up data and recording or reporting them. Sometimes you haven't found this data. These are not your data. You sat down and you are just writing some data. You think the trend should go like this, and you just come up with something. And people do it, and it's very bad. And I think this is something that we should guide against. And wrong authorship. You see, generally we said for an author, he must help in acquisition of funding for misconduct. It is not enough for you to help in acquisition of funding or the collection of data alone. That does not qualify you to be an author. And if you are just this general supervisor of the group, maybe you are just a big boss in the research institute, it doesn't qualify you to be an author on that particular research or publication. And if you are the head of department where the research was carried out, it doesn't also qualify you to be an author, especially if you didn't directly participate in the research. You shouldn't use your power to say, because you are the head, you must just appear on the list of author. And of course, physicians and technicians who collaborated with routine services, and many a time they are paid, they are not also qualified to be on the authors list. And also we have the gift authorship. I've seen this in many instances. Your wife is not in neuroscience, and then because you just want to gratify your wife, you put your wife there, you put your friends there. It is wrong. It is called gift authorship because they have not merited that particular right to be on the list. And if found out, it could be counted against you. Recently, I guess edited for a journal, and we accepted, I won't name the journal now, we accepted this manuscript. After we accepted the manuscript, and it's a very big journal, the authors came and said they wanted to change the authors list significantly. After acceptance, the journal came down heavily on them, and I was so happy that they told the authors that, look, this is malpractice. We are not going to allow it. And they actually rejected the manuscript after the authors have paid the APC, and the paper was slated for publication. But based on changes in authorship, which was going to influence the list significantly, the journal actually rejected the manuscript, and I felt that was okay. So also you have this ghost authorship, where people are supposed to be on the list, but because of some certain situation, maybe they are pharmaceutical industry workers, and if their names are there, it can cause bias. So you want to hide them, and you don't want to give an attribution, so you put somebody there. So in that instance, the gift authorship give people who are not supposed to be there. The ghost authorship, these people, those are supposed to be on the list of authors, but they are not included in the list, which is also a malpractice. In summary, there are so many forms of research misconduct, and the knowledge of research, responsible conduct of research is important, and also responsible conduct of research entails integrity. We should check ourselves and carry ourselves with integrity in anything that we do, and we must uphold research ethics. There should be truthfulness and openness, and researchers should publish their paper responsibly. I know there is this publish or perish, there is this professional pressure that are on us, and sometimes you just want to rush to publish and do something anyhow. But despite that, we should be careful. Even what to publish when you are young, it can have an effect on you when you are old, or when you are established. Somebody can dig up your publication. So we must make sure that whatever is right, we do. And each of these journals that we are publishing with have their own acceptable standard. So in conclusion, every research should be conducted responsibly, following ethical principles, and every institution needs to have an institutional-based ethical research committees, and established researchers needs to continue to learn and mentor their students and mentees properly. It is the role of every one of us to ensure that research is conducted responsibly. And I wish to appreciate the organizers and students of the Ibro ALC School on Neurogenetics and Survival Skill for Young Neuroscientists. This lecture was first presented in that school. I have scaled it down. It was a 1.5 hours lecture, but for our time, I have made it to conform to this time. And I appreciate them for giving that opportunity. And I also want to appreciate my mentors and mentees and the webinar committee, especially my Vice President, Dr. China Oris, and Dr. Ibiri Chibuguda, made it kind of mandatory for me to do this presentation. I want to thank the audience. Thank you very much. These are some of the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daramugwa, are you here?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Professor Owoyele, for this stimulating lecture. So if you have any question, comments, you could either raise your hands so you could talk, or you could type it on the chat box.
Let me thank one of my mentors and a great achiever in the field of pain, Professor Olaitan Sonyawo. I didn't know that she's here. Thank you so much for your message, ma. I appreciate your mentorship.
Okay, we have a hand up. You could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Well, hello, I think that should be me.
Yes, thank you, Prof.
Good morning,
Okay. Thank
Yes,
you, Prof.
University of Learning. I think I should have a comment and a question. I think the first thing is to thank the presenter, our own Professor Owoyele, for bringing up this webinar at this time, where there are issues of research, and then people are concerned about research ethics and the rest. Right. So the webinar is very informative. The first comment I have is about data falsification. Right. I was reading recently on the blog, I can't remember where exactly, where a previous a person who had earned a Nobel Prize was involved in a particular scandal where the article he had published previously was retracted on the ground of data falsification. So this can affect anybody of any status. And the earlier we speak to ethics, the better, so that, as the presenter said, we'll not drag our own name and image in the mud. The second one is, that's a comment. Then the question is, from my own observation, in many laboratories or in some labs I've visited in Europe and America, you see that most of them have cell culture labs. That seems to be standard. And because, as Professor Owoyele has said, one of the three housing research replacements where it's not compulsory that one must use live animals like rats and mouse and so on and so forth. Right? You can start your work with culture cells, cell culture, which many labs do, and you may graduate upwards from there. Right? This is standard in many laboratories, but if you look around in our own locality, in Nigeria especially, you see that many labs don't have tissue culture facility, right? So I just want Prof to speak on this, how we can, why this is so, and how we can do better in terms of ensuring that we don't just limit our research to human subjects and the laboratory animals alone, and that we also get to key into the global standard of the use of cell lines, cultured cells, to ensure that as much as possible, even the use of animals, in addition to reducing the number used, we may even do away with it for many of our experiments and use cultured cells or organoids, as the case may be. So thank you very much, Prof, for your presentation.
Thank you, our Dean. Should I answer, Secretary?
Yeah, okay.
Yes, you may respond.
Okay, thank you, Professor Akinole, our Dean, for the comment and for the question. I was at the 40th annual general meeting of the Physiology Society of Nigeria in February, and we had this presenter, Dr. Olajide from University of Huddersfield, and he did mention that one of the problems we have is equipment to sustain cell lines and cell culture in this part of the world. But he presented some form of research that can actually enable us to be able to have that and kind of modified equipment that can allow the cell lines to survive. And in fact, he did mention about why we can even obtain the cell, rather than importing the cell lines, we can obtain the cells from red blood cells, from other type of, from living human being, and then in collaboration with people in the clinic and work on them and use modified equipment and cause them to survive. And he presented those type of scenario, the one that he used from raw acquisition of cell, and the one from the companies. So I think people are thinking in that direction, and hopefully very soon we'll be able to do some of these cell culture experiment, which is desirable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Please feel free to put down your questions in the chat box. Okay,
Yes,
there is a question here. Yeah. Do I read out the question?
Yes.
He said, thank you for the presentation, sir. You discussed about Tuskegee syphilis. Then I think their aim is good. The question is, was it an intentional act, or there was no alternative to such study then for them to have to leave the farmers untreated for 40 years, according to the discussion, sir.
Thank you. I actually left.
So he wants to know.
I actually left
Okay.
the details out, and this is something we can find on the internet. It's one of those things you learn first when you do learn about ethics, especially when you are in Europe or in America. Actually, when they started the experiment, there was no drug, no medicine to treat syphilis. But within a year that they started the experiment, the penicillin was discovered, and it was being used to treat people, especially the white people. But these black people, they are black. These black people were untreated. And in fact, why it was wrong is that they didn't tell them, and they actually even told them not to go near anything, any drug, anything that can cause kind of a healing or treatment for them. And they kept this information well into, even when the drug for treatment of syphilis has been established for 40 years, and people were dying. And so it was the initial intention, yes, maybe for about 6 months or thereabout, but thereafter, people were going through unbearable pain, and the researchers knew that there are drugs to relieve their pain, and they refused to do that. So it was, everybody agreed that it was a very wrong research at the end of the day.
Thank you for that response. I have a question, Prof. You said in your presentation that multiple and diverse authorship enriches a research article, research work. And most of us are Nigerians, and in some Nigerian universities, it's somewhat being discouraged, especially when you're going for promotion and you have a paper having multiple authors. They tend to, when they are grading it, apportion lower grades. Hence, they're encouraging fewer. When you have fewer authors in your paper, you have higher grades. But when you have multiple authors in your paper, you have tend to have a lower scoring. Do you think that's the right thing to do, or is it something that should be corrected?
Yeah, maybe the grading maybe is not too good, but having multiple authors, that is the in thing. Because nobody can, when you have too many heads, good heads, the research can be richer, and you can discover many things. So collaboration is the word that people do, what people do these days. So outside Nigeria, we've seen papers where you have up to 100 people on the list. The main goal, that is why we are saying we should be careful about this publish or perish, but we should be focused on what the work, the quality of the work that we are doing. Unfortunately, I expect this question, because in some universities, and most universities, if you are the first author, like you are the staff, and then you are the PI, you are the supervisor, you are supposed to be the last author, and your student that is the PhD student is supposed to be the first author. But in this climb, you will not be rewarded, because they will say you are the first author. But naturally, the last author, who should be the corresponding author, just like our editor-in-chief discussed sometimes ago, has his own role in guiding the research. Maybe we need more education for those at the helms of affairs. And maybe as the young people get to take on leadership, this needs to change, because we need to increase the number of authors. But then I see this misconduct also, whereby people just add people's name on the list, and they have not done anything. They are not qualified to be an author. So we have to balance the two. You see, in our climb, we are fond of gift authorship, and sometimes we have ghost authorship. People who have done the work, we won't even give them credit. So how will the university be able to know that this person actually on the list actually did the work? And So that's a big problem. And I can see the dilemma that the authorities are. If we are truthful with ourselves, then we can take the message to the authorities to tell them that in the better climate that we are following, that the people that are on the first list should be recognized, and then those who are there too on the list too, who are not the first authors, should be recognized appropriately. But I do know that in some universities, you'll be asked to define your contribution. I know that it is not also perfect, because your contribution is also weighted according to how the number, your appearance on that list, whether you are number 2, you're number 3, number 4. But in some instances, they will ask you to just tell them. So you might say my contribution is 60%. I've seen people that they are number 6 on the paper where you have 8, and they will tell you that they have contributed 60%. So it is based on that your score will be allotted. So I think more education needs to be done, and that we also that are talking like this, we also need to be sincere with ourselves and be responsible in the way we put authors on our papers. And if we do that, then we should do more work. So when we have more work and more collaboration, then the papers and the points we add up. Thank you. I think Professor Lopade is raising up his hand.
Yes, Professor Lopade, yeah, you have the floor.
Good morning.
Good morning,
thank you, Mr. President, for a nice lecture, a worthy tutorial, and maybe let me also say continuing education for us. I guess probably what touched me most, I want to make comment on from your presentation is reproducibility of results. And sometimes we have practices in the lab that endangers our data and will affect the result from being reproduced even by ourselves and other authors in future. And one example is infection in the animal house. You are doing an experiment, 4 weeks, your 12 animals, in the first 3 weeks, you have lost 3 or 4 of them. And we do not want to know what caused the death of those ones. Someone asked me a question of recent, started with about 8 animals in their control, and about 4 had died in the process. And he said this was controlled, they were not treated. So she was asking for advice. I said, you have to terminate that experiment. They are not worthy to serve as control. Something is wrong. You wouldn't have lost 4 animals, 50% within a short period. Was there infection going on? And because if this is your standard that you are going to compare all other groups with, you have to be wary that you are already losing animals. So many times we are not, we're looking at the end of the experiment. We're not really monitoring the process of the experiment. People think because it's animals, you question, where's the source of water that you are giving the animal? Because you may want to drink clean water, but you just get the water for the animals from any source. You have dirty bottles inside the animal house. You just take water from there for your animals. So these are things that endanger the integrity of our data. Some of our animals, the animal house are not well ventilated. So there may not be too much problem in some timing of the seasons of the year. But there are other timings in the year that if you conduct same experiment, the animals will be affected maybe by extreme cold or by heat stress. So you now wonder that you did this same experiment last year or 2 years ago. Even now you want to add another variable, but you're not getting the results you got the first time. So variables like this matter. I passed through a lab some years ago. They were trying to collect blood sample. The animal was in pain, screaming. It was the screams of the animal that even drew my attention to the lab, trying to get maybe blood from the eye or something. And I said, that's enough to affect your data. So you didn't plan it, but later you see yourself having data that cannot be reproduced. Lastly, is because animals, biological beings are not perfect. They are not uniform. Sometimes when we get data, we should say you saw degeneration of Purkinje cells, but in your 8 animals, that was seen in only 5. Say 70% of the animals showed this, 85%. So it's not absolute. So you've already given that room down. So it could actually later be because, the metabolism of this particular animal, those animals were probably diabetic. This one's already had this. So later, if you consistently monitor such experiments, it may even come to a finding later that animals that have this condition will not be affected in this particular way. And that's why when you are writing some reviewers will query, what was the sex of the animal? And what was the breed? Because ultimately, sometimes all these are variables that affect data. So we don't go out trying to get data that cannot be reproduced, but we need to watch out for these things because inadvertently, they are going to affect our results and the integrity of the data. Again, I thank you very much, Professor Owoyele. And I want to also join you. I don't know whether she's still on the platform. Salute your mentor and a mother to many of us, Professor Laiton Shonyowo, who was on the platform when you are giving your lecture, a retired professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Prof, we have another hand. Esther Oluwan Niran, you have the floor.
Dr. Lubenga Anyanoga, right?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Dr. Lubenga, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you very much. Professor Owoyele, thank you for this lecture. I just want to ask one basic thing, and I hope we need our veterinarians to help us. About issues with the strain of the animals that we've been using for most of our experiment. I know it's very easy for all of us to write Sprague-Dawley, write Wistar, and all of that. But I've asked this question over and over again. Have we been able to authenticate the strain of the animals that we use for our experiments around here? And I think that being responsible in research begins from that end. I don't know if we have centers that have authenticated strains and we all agree to just speak from there so that we can speak same language. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I do know that it is possible to import laboratory animals, and I do know that there is a center in Jos where you can get, I think so, a pure strain. But the issue you have raised is a big issue too. I've always been concerned about that. How are we sure we are actually using what we say we are using? So, but then, if your control and your experimenter are of the same breed and strain, so you might try to rationalize it that we are not using 2 different strains. I don't know if anybody want to also contribute on this.
Sorry, sir. Can we just ask the veterinarians to help us?
Okay.
Yeah, there's no problem with having control and experimental has been the same, but the issue is what we report. Professor Lokwade just spoke about reproducibility. The question is if you write Sprague-Dawley and that wasn't what you use, somebody is going to do it in Finland and is just going to look for that. So is it possible for our veterinarians to please help us in this matter? Thank you.
Okay, so Professor Lokwade is a veterinarian. So Prof. Lokwade, are you still there? Are you speak on this?
Thank you. Strain typing is pure genetics. It's not solely a veterinarian issue. What I would just say is that in the last 20 years, I know that you have some places where the Wister rats that was used there was imported. The Prof has finished, left the system, probably died, and they've continued the inbreeding from that particular Wister rat that was imported. What I think we get into trouble for is when something is plain Wister rat and you do not know the strain, but you now write, you use BAC C55C so strain, well, which itself is corruption. So what you just know that it's a Wister rat, but the ideal thing going forward is regularly we need to be doing genetic typing to ascertain, even in the best of places, they do that to ascertain the strain, or it's because we are disadvantaged. There are standardized animal facilities that sell rats. I think that's where we need to go to. So some of our colleagues can get involved in that. We know that you imported this particular strain, you typed it, and then you maintain an inbred lane. And then people know that the mice you get here, two things are obvious. The strain is known, their facility maintains biosafety, and then we know that what we are getting from here is authentic. I think probably that's the way to go to for us, even as scientists within ourselves, to have people who, in addition to their scientific work, drives into the business and good ethics of raising animals so that we are sure what we are buying.
Thank you, Prof. I know that fruit fly Drosophila is being imported to the country, and I think that's one way out to try to get to people that sell, because even in the US, most places, you don't even breed your own rats. Sometimes you buy from these companies and these holdings, and which are pure lines. So I think it's one area in our country that we need to focus on going forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So we have some questions on the chat box. I will just quickly run them through. We have one. Thank you so much for your presentation, sir. Please, I'd love to ask this question. How can we navigate the ethical issues involving participants' consent among patients with severe cognitive impairments who are unable to make rational decisions for themselves?
I think that is a bit simple enough, that they probably have caregivers, and if they cannot read and they can't hear what you are saying, so you have next of kins and what have you, who can take decisions on their part. I think that's generally what is used.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to the next question. In most Nigerian institutions, there is a strong drive to discourage research publications in local journals, mostly termed predatory journals. Many researchers tend to tailor their results to be acceptable by the so-called high impact journals, with Thomson, Reuters, Scopus, Web of Science, etc. What can Nigerian researchers do to promote and encourage acceptance of articles published in Nigerian professional bodies by appraisal and promotion bodies in Nigerian universities?
Thank you. I think it depends on the university, and we don't have this uniform standard. Like in my own university, you can bring any journal, either local, or we call them local, the one in the locality, and then national, the one that is published in Nigeria, and then international, the one that is published outside Nigeria. For my own institution, University of Ilorin, even up to lecturer 1 position, you can do all your publication in Nigerian-based journals. And by the time you are going to senior lecturer, it is expected that you have only 10% of international publication, and then you have 40%, 50% of national publication, and 40%. By the time you are going to reader, so it's increased by 10. So by the time you are going for the professor, the chair, it's expected that you publish in 30%. So I think we have this variation in this what each university accepts. But it is not just good to say maybe our academic institutions are not allowing us to publish in local journals or national journals. Having said that, we recently had a retreat at the postgraduate level, and we were trying to set up a guideline for publication by PhD students. And we were saying, okay, we want something published in international journal, but we resolved at something. We said, let this publication, at least one publication in a Q4 journal, and that was good enough, because there are journals in Nigeria, at least up to 4 or 5 journals that are in Q4. Some are even in Q3. So I think our journals too need to increase their activity and be more feasible, and try to get indexed by these international bodies and like PubMed and what have we, so that they can compete adequately with those that are outside. If we as scientists are competing to some extent with our colleague outside, why shouldn't our journals also compete as much as possible with the journals that are outside? We shouldn't just sit down and say, okay, because you are not good and we should still continue to use you. So, but as I've said, it depends on the university or the institution. There are levels, there are percentages that are accepted based on local. But again, I want to debunk one issue that says that local journals are termed predatory. No, there are some international journals, by far mostly, they are termed predatory because of their behavior. You send paper to them, they will not review, and they'll be asking you for money. You send paper to them, within 1 week, they are published it, and when you look at the content, it's not well edited. So these are the things that makes a journal to become predatory, and not because they are published locally or nationally. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, ma, can I add to my Oga's statement, because he really hit the key. I want to use it to now domesticate to our neuroscience journal, which of recent, I mean, I've been privy to some of the reviewers, because I know some people around my in my lab and around my lab who have sent articles there. The quality of review has increased tremendously, immense. So once quality of what is being published is good, visibility is there, the science is good, then the ripple effect is that a lot of that work will be cited, even by people outside this country. And at the end of the day, it gives the journal its credence. Now, that is that depth that is absent, sorry to say, in many local journals. Because when you know you want to compete, you get good reviewers. You have plagiarism tests. So if it's not a local international thing, because I mean, in Ibadan, like Professor Owoyele said, that different stand. In Ibadan, we put some local journals at international standard level. So even though they are published locally, we call them international journals. We look at the editorial board. We look at the fact that they are on Scopus. A few of them are on PubMed, so they are termed international. But the domestication is for journals that are local within the country, if I use that word. Once proper things are done, good editorial board, plagiarism text, good review, it has visibility, and with time is well cited, then all those journals too, you will see that their demand will become higher. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'll just go through the next question. I would like to know if there is a general document on who should be on the list of authors to country. Then I'll quickly read the second question so you could respond to both at once. Thank you for your presentation, sir. I have a concern for online mode of data collection for surveys, as it inadvertently excludes valid respondents who do not have internet access or who do not have social media presence. How can we resolve this?
Oh, of course, for the last one, you will state just like Professor Lokade said, that if you have like 10 animals and then you have seven of them have neurodegeneration and the 3 did not have, you just take the percentage. You have to state the criteria for which your research was conducted. you say that this is open to those who have the access to social media. So that everybody will know that that's a limitation for your work. We always have limitation to your research. So you put that limitation, stating very clearly that this research is open. That's why you see online polling. It may not really be the reality because only people can access the online are able to do that polling. I think that is that. The second question, please.
Okay. Who should be on the, okay, he's asking if there is a general document on who should be on the list of authors in a paper. That it looks like it varies from country.
Yes, it was part of my slide. I listed what qualifies anybody to be an author. And I think the secretary can make it know that this recording, we are recording and it's going to be on YouTube. So we can always go back to view or download the video.
Okay, thank you. So I think we do not have any more questions, and it's already 11. Okay. Yes, yeah, Professor Dambrino, you have the floor. Please,
Professor
sir, you have the
Dambrino, you can speak. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning to all. I would like to thank the President, Professor Owoyele, for the presentation. And I also like to thank the various contributors from question to Professor Olapade, who added some contributions. And I want to make a few contributions too. You know, like Professor Olapade have said earlier on, you know, we are in the business of actually improving ourselves and doing what is called continuing education. You know, one of the things that has not actually been well established as part of the responsible conduct of research is the issue of data ownership. You know, most often, or I don't know, maybe a few places or a few labs who have the experience and the understanding actually know who actually owns the data. You know, most often when you have students, for instance, they always believe that data is owned by them. I would like to correct that impression. Data is actually owned by the lab where a work has actually been done. And the reason being the fact that when there are issues that will follow up, whether allegations of misconduct or whatever, you know, the data will be handy and be available for committees to investigate and know how true the situation is, whether there was fabrication, falsification, or manipulation of data. You know, just this week, I actually received a mail from a principal investigator in a university I visited some 7 years ago. I visited that university, I visited that lab in 2015. And I did some work, you know, I got some data, but you know, the data was not enough to actually publish a paper. And so since the data is the lab's data, I left the data there. And years after me, you know, other visitors, other students actually did some other work that actually enriched that particular data. You know, so the mail I got just this week was to tell me that, okay, you know, the work you started doing some time ago, this is actually what has happened. And we are able to bring out a paper out of it, blah, blah, blah. So please, I would like you to go through it. And if you have any concerns, you can raise it and stuff like that. Now, two things that corroborated what I'm saying is, number one, the data was there. They could look at it and say, okay, can we also look at this particular work from this particular direction or in that particular direction? You know, number two, They contacted me for me to see what came out of the data and additional data that were actually procured later on, and they were asking me for my comment to see if I have any concern, So it's very important. We have students who are working with us or other people who will actually do their work under your supervision and stuff like that. And when they go to write papers, even though your name can be on the paper, but they don't care to send it to you for your own evaluation and for your own agreement. And all you need to do, or all you need to get, is one day you are just checking your mail, and then you will see a letter from the journal editor saying that, okay, so person have submitted this paper, blah, 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 blah. So we want you to know that so and so. And we kept telling students, and junior colleagues, that please do not submit any paper without getting all the people on the paper knowing that this is what actually has happened, and for them to be able to make contributions. But over time, I have reflected on this thing, and I've discovered that why some students actually do that is because they want to include somebody, possibly their friend or their own mate or something like that, and maybe they have a feeling that the senior person may raise objection or questions on that and issues. And again, we should appreciate the fact that this is part of the responsible conduct of research, just like the speaker have actually presented. We must ensure we are doing the right thing so that we can be taken seriously. Then number two, the issue of promotion, like the coordinator asks about the number of, many of these things is actually stemming out of lack of trust that we have for ourselves. Whether I just gave a scenario, and these scenarios are ubiquitous. Where somebody who doesn't know anything about a paper, the person is put, okay, this paper is in this particular area, you get to see an author, or somebody who is claimed to be an author is not in that particular area, or is not even in that particular discipline. So you begin to wonder, how is it that somebody who is completely outside the scope of this research, is on this article? Now, these are the reasons why most often the universities frown at distance. But like it has been said, we actually need to grow and get out of this stage. Today, we are in a world where we need to encourage people, to come from all angles in the name of collaboration, but also in the name of contributing, to the conceptual framework of and the design of the research. If somebody does not actually contribute, to a degree that he can actually warrant to be an author, I don't think we're doing ourselves good for us to be including people on the paper. And lastly, let me also comment on the issue of local, like it has been said. See, a journal is a journal, even though, we have metrics that try to rank them to say this one is high profile, this one is low profile, or this one is local, this one. I like the way the Ibadan people are looking at the papers, whether it's University of Ibadan paper, whether it's Ahmadu Bello University journal, as far as is actually indexed by a number of the known databases, then it has become acceptable. And the reason is because, we know what it takes for a paper or for a journal to actually be indexed by Scopus, to be indexed by a number of the databases. Now, for them to index you, they must have seen how consistent, they must have seen how reliable you have shown yourself to be. So the moment a journal is indexed by any of these known bodies, then automatically it should be taken as international. And what we can do Like Professor Lapade have said earlier on, if we don't patronize the local journals, they will never get to that level. And by the way, when we have this in our mind, when we think this paper looks very high, it's a hit. We choose a journal far away to send it to, and then we forget about our own local journal. But let me also tell you this: we can improve the ranking of our own journals by the kind of papers they are actually coming out. If you see, like he actually mentioned about a local journal. I know a local journal. Let me not even hide the name. If you take the Nigerian Journal of Physiological Journal, this is one Nigerian journal, honestly, that has really shown, number one, is very visible. Number two, publications, the reviewing process, and by so papers that eventually get to be published, they get to be cited by other. You can see journals articles in other high-ranking paper actually making reference to that. Now, the simple reason is because it's visible. Because it's visible, it's indexed, everything. So papers that will go there, they have a higher chance of actually being cited by this. So that is what we can do to ourselves to improve our own image by doing the right thing, by also trying to fall in line with the international best practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. We still have some hands. Prof. Sonasawo.
Yeah, thank you, my secretary. Let me join other people to appreciate and to thank our speaker, our president, today for that big. And it will be a great omission not to recognize our dear mother and grandmother to some on this platform who has taught us in the field of pain. That's Professor Shunyo. We really appreciate you, ma, taking time to join this presentation. Now, straight to the point, I saw somebody who, I don't know whether it has been addressed, because I stepped out for a few seconds at a point, talking about some institution prescribing or recognizing a single author before they can attain a specific cadre in the university. I don't know the meaning of the. I'm not very sure. Maybe the speaker will talk on that. And if we have one or two senior or more senior person on this platform, what their opinion is, that one a good prescription for promotion or for whatever it may be within the university, a single authorship. Thank you.
Okay, let me just weigh in briefly. Listings, it is still possible to have a single author paper, like a review that you decide to write on your own, like the editorial. So it is possible for you to have a single author. So let us not believe that it's not possible. It is possible to still have a single author paper. But the trend globally, if it is a very good research work, you have to collaborate. You can't have everything. Sometimes when you are a established PI, you are going to have a PhD student, you're going to have a postdoc, and they are the one that are going to do this work. So they need to be cited. And as for, and it's strange, but I do know that in some institutions, you get 100% when you are the only one that have been published the work, and then you get probably 70% if it's multiple authorship. So unfortunately, it still exists. Maybe I will not say maybe it's maybe it's an indirect push for people to publish singly, but that's our administrators needs to be educated otherwise. It is not desirable in fields like neuroscience and to have one single author. It is not desirable.
Thank you, sir, for the response. We still have
Let me also say something on that. The truth of the matter is this. I remember when I was the head of department some time ago, I went to make a presentation about promotion. And when they look at the submission, the people were not really, happy with the submission. They were suspicious. I said, look, wait a minute. This particular candidate they were making presentation for, he has this number of papers or articles, and then out of them, almost 60% is single authorship. And they say, see, my friend, if we look at this and we know what it takes to do scientific research, especially when you are going to be handling animals, you are going to do this, you are going to do that, you are going to do this. So we have problem where an individual will say that he alone has actually done this and actually done that. Now, you see, one of the things that multiple authorship guides or protects is this tendency to falsify, to fabricate. When you have two or more authors, honestly speaking, the probability that two or more people will come together and say, even though we know this data is not what we obtain from the research, we are going to report it like that. So if any university has that idea that they want to get people to publish articles alone, I think that may actually be negating the principle of scholarship. Now, like the speaker have said, the idea of writing a review, yes, one person can write a review, but let me also say this thing quickly. As much as one person can write a review, I can also say that two or more people writing the same review will even be better. This is actually coming from the popular saying that two heads are better than one. Why are they saying that? Because one person cannot see the same thing from all the perspectives. And if there are universities like that, I think with the people who may have some or who are coming from that university may have to start doing some campaign so that the university can change some of those policies. We all know sometimes you actually get to see a paper that the list of authorship is actually larger than the text. I've seen that paper. I've seen a paper like that before. The list of authors is larger than the text of the paper. I don't know whether you have seen. So, in as much as we want to claim that we want the people to work, you see, we must also embrace, the culture of collaboration, because collaboration produces better results. Let me use the scripture where it says, "What the one can actually fall 1,000, but two can fall 10,000." Collaboration have a multiplying effect in the product of whatever you are doing, including writing scientific articles. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof, for the response. We're actually behind. We've gone beyond our time limit, but we still have two hands up. Probably we could just take the two.
Okay.
Dr. Omowumi Femi, could you just briefly ask your question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Professor Owoyele, for the insightful presentation. I just wanted to also put in my experience in our lab, because experience is the best teacher, to corroborate what Professor Dambono said. In my lab in University of Ibadan, the developmental neurobiology unit under the leadership of Professor Shokunbi. What we do is when the students come in, we read out the riot act to them and we let them know that their data are not theirs. From the beginning, they already know. And we let them know that once they are leaving, they have a logbook. Each student have a logbook. And when they are leaving, they drop the logbook with us and they drop all their slides with us. They don't go away with the slides. they drop their slides and they drop their logbook. By that, all the slides of the students and the logbook, the data collection is domiciled in the lab. And I think every other lab should also do that. And one thing I know that my prof does is that if a student peradventure publishes an article without his knowledge, he will not let it go. He will write the journal and let them know that he doesn't know anything about it. So we should not be sentimental. We should let these students know and say, yeah, leave them. No. We are not teaching them right by leaving them. We should write the journal and refute it that we don't know anything about it. By so that doing that, we'll be able to teach them a lesson and others will not do that again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this insightful comment. So we have one more hand, Dr. Soliu Atunwa. Sorry.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning, all.
Yeah.
Morning.
Let me also congratulate Professor Owoyele. Thank you very much for the well-informative lecture. This one is particular to Nigerian Journal of Physiology. I discovered recently, I think about 2-3 days ago, that is in Agile Publishers. And I don't know whether you are very much aware, sir, that Agile is not, as a publisher, is not accepted in Uniloring. In fact, I was so surprised at a point in time when one of my papers was actually published by Agile. So now seeing Nigerian Journal of Physiology also being published by it, I know definitely it's going to be an issue if I should publish there with regards to any of my paper during promotion. So please, sir, what can you say on this? And if possible, what efforts you think can be made to make the authority aware? Because honestly, it's not the journal itself, but it's the publisher that they raise eyebrow about. Thank you, sir.
Well, Dr. Atunwa, or pharmacist Atunwa, although this is not about physiology and this is neuroscience, but because I wear so many caps and as the deputy editor-in-chief for that same journal,
exactly, sir.
So I can actually speak. Agile is not a publisher per se. That is, it's an acronym for Africa Journals Online. So it's a collection of all journals. So you send your publication there, is listed, it is warehoused there, and it can be warehoused in other places. I hope you are not confusing academic journals with Agile, because as a staff of University of London, I've never heard that they have had any issue against Agile. I don't think so.
Okay.
Yes, I don't think so.
Okay.
But academic publishers, journals, these are the published predatory papers all up and down. So I guess that may be one you are talking about. But for Agile, even our faculty journal, Tropical Journal of Health Sciences, is listed on Agile. So I don't think the information is true.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Professor Owoyele, for this presentation and for entertaining all the questions. Thank you to all the participants for your comments. I'll just invite Dr. Orish to say a few concluding words and officially end the webinar. Dr. Orish.
Okay,
China.
thank you so much, Dr. Thanks, Professor Owoyele, for such an exciting and engaging talk. I would like to just stress on this word of advice that Prof said, everyone that just participated. Please let us embrace the culture of integrity. Remember that we owe ourselves, our funders, the society truth. Also, let us do research that will provide solution. When you talk about research, you say, do what nobody else has done. Think about what nobody else has thought. I think these are some of the ingredients of a Nobel Prize winner. Having said that, on behalf of Neuroscience Society of Nigeria, ESCO, I would love to say a thunderous thank you to all our participants, our professors, for your noble contributions, our senior colleagues, our students. I'm pretty sure that we've learned a lot. One or two things that will really aid us to advance our career, especially in research. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you and bye. See you in the next
Thank you very
presentation.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.